Hey guys, this is Amber from NotableInk.com, and I'm so excited to be hopping along with Altenew today for their July 2019 Stencil Release Blog Hop and Giveaway. I've seen a lot of the cards on the hop already, and there's just loads of inspiration and just great ideas for you to be able to put your stencils to use. Today, I'm going to be sharing 8 techniques that you can use with your stencils. Let's take a look at the stencils being released. There's 9. We have Milky Way stencil, Diamond Builder stencil, Doily Frame stencil, On the Plus Side stencil, Wonderful Wreath stencil, Color Block Heart stencil, Buffalo Plaid Builder stencil, Beach Towel Stripes, and Bubble Wrap stencil. Sue, if you're out there and you're watching my video, I was thrilled when I saw the Bubble Wrap stencil. So here is the packaging so you can see the back. This gives you a little bit of inspiration to get started, and also if it's a builder stencil, it's going to give you the layering guide on how to match those up and what to do with your stencil. So we're going to start with technique 1 and 2, which is your standard ink blending and dry embossing. So we're going to be using On the Plus Side for our dry embossing, and I'm just going to do one color. So I have Volcano Lake here, and I'm just going to do some really easy ink blending. These are just the makeup brushes from Amazon, and I find that they just work amazingly well. So some really like ink blending that I'm just kind of fading off. But what I end up doing is using a circle stacking die to cut a piece of this out and use that on my card. I also paired it with some pen sketched flowers that I colored with the Altenew artist markers, and I'll have the colors that I used listed on my blog post. The other thing that I did was I used the Beach Towel Stripe stencil to dry emboss the background. I will list the steps that I used to do the dry embossing. I didn't bring my Gemini Junior over to my desk to show that. Next up, we have masking the stencil. So I'm going to use some strips of washi tape, and this is just tape from, the Michaels checkout stand, but I got to tell you, these washi tapes were making me so happy. I thought they were so festive, and I loved that color green. So I'm just masking off different stripes because I wanted this to be a multicolor stripe. And in fact, my card design was very much on the nose. I am kind of recreating a beach towel is what I'm creating here. So the first color I used was Coral Bliss. This is Galactic Stream, and I was super impressed with how saturated that ink blended, and I think it might have a little bit to do with I just cleaned my brushes and they were a little damp, so I'm leaving this in because I totally ripped off my cardstock there, and I'm going to show you how I fixed that up because I'm not starting over. We're just going to go with that. And then what I have here is Altenew Olive, and that's from the Tropical Forest. So before I started ink blending, I did spray my stencil with some Krylon, I think it's Easy Tack adhesive spray, and it did really well. I didn't have any issues with it, although I'll tell you about the issue I had with it later. So I'm just using some Ranger Multimedia Matte, and I'm just going to press down that flap there. And what I'm going to end up doing is I do some die cut inlay with Altenew Study in Watercolor. So you can see that there, and I ended up cutting out that part anyway. Here I left this in. I'm not really going to go through the card making portion of things, but look at that. I mean, seriously, that is like such a newbie thing to do. But so I just brushed it off with my Nuvo Surface Sweep, and fortunately I still had that and unwind stamp in my Misty. So I heat set the inks a little bit and then went ahead and restamped and heat embossed. So the Study in Watercolor that you see there is die cut and inlaid into this card front panel, and I added some Nuvo drops to it. This we're going to be using builder stencils, and we're going to fussy cut out some areas of the stencil. So here we have the Diamond Builder set, and this is the layering guide that you get on the back of the packaging, which is really nice because it's going to show you exactly what to do. This is a stencil you're going to use in 4 different orientations with 4 different colors, and that is going to give you this like astonishing 3D effect. I mean, this was so cool. And I used fairly light color inks here and did some pretty like ink blending. one of the cards that I saw, though, I think it was Emily's, she did like the most vibrant purples on her card that used this, and it was just amazing. I thought it was so striking. So when I looked at this, all I could see was X's and O's, X's and O's. And so I decided to cut those out because I thought that they would be perfect to go with the color block heart stencil. So here you see the layering guide here. Now, before I started ink blending this, I actually dry embossed this stencil into the cardstock in both of the directions because I wanted to mask off the center but still have a subtle pattern in the background. And you can kind of see it here. I'm going to get a little bit closer. You can see the dry embossed pattern there. So even the inked areas are also dry embossed. And then we'll go ahead and put on our X's and O's, and I added sub-sentiment. And this card came together fairly easy. So the Love You is from Label Love. Next up, we have Watercolor Wash Technique. And we also did some dry embossing on the panel that's behind as well. And that was with the Feeling Dotty stencil. So I thought that would be a good pair to this bubble wrap stencil, which are very large circles. So again, I've put some spray adhesive on the back, and then I'm just using clean clear water and almost covering the whole card front. And this is watercolor paper. I'll have all the supplies listed below, and I'm just using a really down watered crisp dye ink there. I want to say that's Arctic. I'll double check that, and I want to say I used Arctic, or it might have been Iceberg, and this, it looks like Volcano Lake there. And so I dried them in between, and I went ahead and put on another one, and then I'm going to dry it again before I take the stencil off because I don't want the pooling to go outside of the edges. So make sure it's dry before you remove your stencil. And I think that's a really nice subtle look. I paired that with Floral Fantasy 3D dye. Next up, we have embossing paste and watercolor drips. So I've got my embossing paste here, and I'm just going to smooth that on. The consistency of this is so awesome. It's almost like a whipped buttercream, and it's just so easy to spread. So for this, I'm using a fairly smooth surface, so I got it pretty smooth. I let it dry completely, which might take an hour, a little bit more. And I've started to put some watercolor drops on here, and I'm sucking up any of the areas with my mostly dry brush if I don't want it to go all the way down to the bottom. So what I'm doing is I'm loading up this, I think that's a 12 round brush with a lot of water and a lot of crisp dye ink. And then I'm just kind of running it across the top edge of the paper so I can get it to drip. This is a little bit like Plinko, if you remember The Price is Right. So if you don't have like a path for it to go down, it's going to go down the one next to it. So you kind of have to start a little bit of a path for it so that it has somewhere to go. And so again, I'm just going to suck up one of those trails so that we have a variance in some short ones, some long ones. I let that dry. Again, I have some pin sketched flowers. This time I stamped them in Obsidian Black on vellum, and I clear heat embossed them, and I'm just putting a little Ranger Multimedia matte behind some of the embossed areas. And I'll just hold that down. And that sentiment Be Happy is also from Pin Sketch Flowers. And there's the final card. And that is it. We'll run through the cards and techniques one more time. So here we have, on the plus side, beach towel stripes with just regular ink blending, dry embossing, and we've got the Pin Sketch Flowers. We have beach towel stripes with some masking of the stencil in order to allow for multiple colors of ink blending. We did a little die cut inlay with a study in watercolor. Here we have the bubble wrap stencil, Feeling Dotty stencil with watercolor wash and dry embossing. We've also got Floral Fantasy there. We have the two builder sets, color block hearts, the diamond builder set. We did some fussy cutting and dry embossing here. And then lastly, we have the bubble wrap with embossing paste. We did some watercolor drips, and then we added some vellum Pin Sketch Flowers. Woo, that was a whirlwind of techniques. I hope that you learned something new or got a refresher on maybe some techniques that you had forgotten about. The Pixie spray I think is great. A lot of people rave about that. I use the Krylon. One thing I wanted to mention about the Krylon Easy Tack is that I ran it through to dry emboss something, and I'm telling you what, the pressure of the Gemini Junior made that sucker stick. It was not temporary anymore. It ripped off the entire card front. So I'd be a little careful with that. Maybe don't run it through a die cutting machine because it will really adhere it down. There are some great stencils in this release as well as the last release of stencils that they have. I'll be sure to link my last video at the end here so you can check out those cards as well. Be sure to stop by my blog and leave a comment for a chance to win an Altenew gift certificate so that you can go shopping for some goodies. Altenew is always so generous, and there are tons of prizes along the hop and just loads of inspiration. I'd love to hear from you, so let me know in the comments down below if you have any video requests. And if you enjoyed this, smash that like button and the subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you so much for stopping by, and until next time, breathe, ink, inspire.